And when you look at the data, every single one of those studies at least said the same thing. The subjects were sedentary. Now, if you take a 20-year-old and put them in bed for 3 weeks, they're going to lose muscle mass. So why do we say it's age-related? Yet every one of those studies said sedentary. They weren't exercising. They weren't moving for 10 years, 12 years. And then the flip side of that, there's a lot of data that shows, guess what? People in their 80s aren't losing muscle as long as they stay exercising. That's the truth.
Hey there, I'm Bria, and welcome to the Period Whisperer podcast. If you're over 35 and ready for real answers about your hormones, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe and stay with us. Hey there, sisters. Welcome back to the Period Whisperer podcast. And if you talk, I have found anyway, if you talk to enough women in midlife, which I'm sure all of you are talking to all of your friends, I think you'll hear a common theme. My back hurts, my hips are tight, my knees don't like running anymore, my body just doesn't move the way it used to. I mean, these are things that I actually feel in my body as well and have to work very hard on. And somewhere along the way, I think many of us actually start believing that pain and stiffness are simply a part of aging. But what if that story isn't actually true? Today's wonderful expert guest is Eileen Kopsaftis, who has spent more than 30 years helping people understand the real reasons pain show up in the body and how authentic human movement can restore strength, mobility, and resilience as we age. And I'm very excited about this because I love hearing this part of a conversation. Eileen is a chronic pain, health, and movement expert and the founder of Have Lifelong Wellbeing. She's also the best-selling author of the books Pain Culprits and Aging Culprits, which I think we'll get to today. Her mission is to challenge outdated beliefs about aging and teach people how to move in ways that support a body that stays strong, capable, and pain-free for decades. Doesn't that sound amazing? So in this conversation today, we're talking about why pain is so common in modern life, the biggest myths about aging and movement, and how understanding authentic movement can help you stay strong and mobile long enough into midlife and beyond. Eileen, I'm so happy we're here. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so thankful to be, added as a guest so that I can reach your audience and hopefully really impact their lives for the good.
I think you will. When we were talking about doing the show, I thought, oh gosh, yeah, when people need this. I mean, at all age, I think we were talking about at any age, but I think this in midlife and perimenopause is when we really start to be aware of this discomfort sometimes. So I'm grateful for your time today.
Yes, thank you.
Now, I know you've spent more than 30 years helping people get out of pain and move better. What was the personal or professional experience that kind of first sparked your passion for this work?
Even as a child, I always related to the underdog, to someone who needed help or was struggling. It's just kind of in my DNA.
Mm.
So I kind of wanted to be a doctor when I was little. And then when I got old enough to go to med school, I didn't really agree with the medical model because not disrespecting doctors, but, just prescribing medications to manage disease wasn't something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I decided I might go into nutrition because I knew the impact food could have on the human body. And then I realized I disagreed with what they were teaching at the time because that was quite some time ago. And if you disagree, they kind of don't pass you. So I looked into the PT program because the catalog I had from the local college that had degrees in these different options had a physical therapy program. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've always been fascinated by the human body. And then I can actually spend time with people and really help them to get rid of pain instead of, any other avenue. So that just kind of became my passion. And I was really blessed to meet some amazing people very early in my journey, even before I graduated, that were extremely successful in helping people get out of pain. And so when I graduated, and once I got licensed, I reached out to one person in particular who had spoken at one of my classes during college time. And she was really successful at helping people. She had a 3-week waiting list, and doctors sent people to her specifically. And so I asked her, please aim me at what will work for people and keep me from wasting my time and resources on things that won't work. And so we quickly became very good friends. We traveled together constantly for coursework. I think I probably spent more in the first 5 years after I graduated on learning than I did to earn my degree. I was so just addicted to learning because everything I learned was made me that much better at helping people. And, not that I'm all that brilliant. I kind of joke and say I'm just really gifted at finding brilliant people and learning what they know. And so, yeah, I've just been on this mission. I hate to think of people being in pain, and I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if it wasn't part of the solution. So it's kind of what gives me peace in life because I know I'm helping people and, making a difference, hopefully.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful, and I can even like, you have a very healing energy as well, so, yeah, I'm very excited to continue to hear more about that, and I love that you said that you sleep more in the 5 years after because I do think I mean, education never ends, right? Like, things
Yeah.
changing, we learn new things, science changes, so I think it's really
Yeah.
beautiful that you shared that because 'cause I'm pretty sure I've done a very similar thing.
Yes, and since that first 5 years, I've probably, yeah, um, done that several times over.
I'd love to hear sometime, like, do you recall, like, one of the most impactful, areas that you studied, or were they all just really wonderful for you?
Well, the first 15 years I spent learning manual techniques. I would put my hands on people and figure out what was wrong with, the alignment, and it was very soft, gentle biomechanical corrections, not high force, high velocity thrust. And again, I'm not picking on chiropractors. I used to get patients who were kind of struggling after those visits because there were so many other systems involved that a manipulation kind of put them in trauma. Now, a lot of people get helped by that, so it's not like it's everybody, but I never wanted to be the one that would put anybody in trauma, ever. I never wanted that risk. So everything I took was always only potential benefit, no potential harm. And so they're mostly osteopathic techniques like muscle energy, strain and counter strain, myofascial release, craniosacral release, Mulligan's mobilization with movement, and the list goes on. And but the last plus 15 years of my profession, I came across what I call the holy grail of movement. And that's why you see me use the word authentic movement, authentic human movement all the time, because I took pretty much all the coursework they have, including their highest level of coursework, which is kind of like a PhD in human biomechanics. And that's through the Gray Institute. So if anybody wants to look that up, it's GRAY. Now, they only teach professionals, they don't teach the general population. And so I realized, well, the general population kind of needs to be trained in this stuff. They don't need to know all the anatomy, they don't need to know all the biomechanics, they don't need to know the physics, but they need to know how to train their body correctly. And so I started doing that at the local community college in classes. I created online coursework where people could learn it. I have a YouTube channel and, wrote my books, and it it works. I mean, people are literally able to fix themselves. So I would say that's probably the most transformative coursework I've taken because now I empower people instead of having them be dependent on me.
I love that. It's that old what is that old saying about teach a man to fish? And I think if you're teaching people, how to do that. I'm excited to ask about authentic human movement because it's not a term I'm familiar with, but I want to kind of get into a little bit of maybe myth busting or gapping for everyone listening first. I've heard one of the messages you share that is that decline as we age is not inevitable. And I think that's probably some of us hope that, but it doesn't seem to feel that way. Um, why do you believe that narrative is inaccurate?
Well, because I've seen it, I've observed it.
Mm.
I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've worked with people over 100 years old and seen them get stronger by doing squats and parallel bars.
Oh,
I've worked with people in their 80s and 90s who struggled to get out of a chair, who regained strength and could get up like a shot. So I've seen the human body be extremely resilient and adaptable, is what I tell them. When they respond well to something, I say, oh, your body's adaptable. It's going to work with us. Let's keep going. I believe the reason that narrative has become so popular, so like everywhere you look and read and hear, is because we commonly see it.
yeah. Yeah.
And as I tell people, and they get it, I do a lot of free online events, and I've had people say, "Oh my gosh, that makes such sense." But just because something's common doesn't mean it's normal. And so I sort of give this little analogy, cardiovascular disease is common. A whole bunch of people have it. But when you look up the definition of disease, it says it's abnormal functioning. So just because something's common doesn't mean it's normal. So even though we commonly see people decline as they age, that doesn't mean it's normal. And, I'm a big data girl and I look at the data and I've looked at that age-related lean muscle loss and it's completely inaccurate because it has nothing to do with age. It has everything to do with activity level. Because when you look into the studies, and I've taken graduate level biostatistics, so I can tell when they're playing with numbers or they're manipulating things. And when you look at the data, the actual data itself, every single one of those studies, at least every one I've read, now I've probably not read them all, but every one I've read has said the same thing. The subjects were sedentary. Now, if you take a 20-year-old and put them in bed for 3 weeks, they're going to lose muscle mass.
Yeah.
So why do we say it's age-related? And it was so funny because every one of those studies said age-related. Yet every one of those studies said sedentary. They weren't exercising. They weren't moving for 10 years, 12 years, whatever it was, when they followed up with them. And then the flip side of that, there's a lot of data that shows, guess what? People in their 80s aren't losing muscle as long as they stay exercising.
Uh,
So that's the truth.
yeah.
But that's not what we're hearing.
And not what we're seeing, I guess, either.
Correct.
For the
Yes. Yes.
I love that you just kind of dispelled that. So one, I have to tell you, I think you've just disproved the fact that you are not just a brilliant person, that you only collect brilliant people. I think what you just shared there was very brilliant. So thank you. Are there cultures in this world or countries where you find that also disproves that, where maybe people are seeing like are seeing the opposite of what we're seeing here more commonly? I'm just curious.
Well, we're all probably familiar with the blue zones and
Yeah.
all of those different things. And I've listened to experts talk about the blue zones at different conferences. And I've looked into that as well. And I think the most important thing is it has to do with mindset. So my book, Aging Culprits, the first chapter is on mindset. It's on belief systems. So whatever we believe, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if we believe we're supposed to decline, that's going to influence our choices, our activity levels, our decisions, our life. People are buying houses without stairs so that they can age in place because mentally they trust they're going to decline. And getting rid of the stairs is the number one cause of not being able to do stairs.
Goodness.
So I tell people, please keep the stairs. You need the stairs. I have somebody in my academy who's in her 80s, and she climbs 13 to 14 flights of stairs every single day to stay in shape.
Oh my goodness. I love that. That's such a
So,
powerful point.
yeah. And she doesn't run up them, but she climbs them.
Yeah, as something to do, as a functional thing. Um, so I know that, we were kind of talking about the muscle decline, but what about chronic pain? Like, why do you think chronic pain has become so much more common in modern life? Like even with people who are staying active?
Yes. So, well, there's flip side. Those who are not moving, the human body's designed to move. And so when we're sedentary, we are going to end up with pain because we're going to lose the ability to do things. We're going to lose strength. We're going to lose muscle size. Joints are not going to be working the way they're designed to work because muscles are what control the movement. And if the muscles aren't working right, the movement isn't going to be right. So it's a simple deduction.
Yeah.
But those who are active, the chronic pain issues typically is because they're training their body, and I did a YouTube video on this one, like dead people. And so this is where we get into the authentic movement thing, okay? The anatomy of the human body has been learned by studying cadavers. So, for hundreds and hundreds of years, we've been looking at cadavers. We see where the muscles attach on the bones. And when we look and see if that muscle shortens, that movement occurs, we deduct that that's the job of that muscle. And so if we do that movement against resistance, that muscle will get stronger. Now, technically, it's true. However, movement is dependent on the context of the task we're performing. So I'll explain, and this will really help everybody to understand because this is a simple way to explain it. The hamstrings. Most people know that if you bend your knee, your hamstrings are shortening. So we go to the gym, we put our foot against something that's going to give us resistance, and we bend our knee against resistance. Whether we're standing, whether we're lying on our stomach, we're still pushing against resistance repetitively to shorten the hamstring. Now here's the rub. Yes, the hamstring will do that. Yes, it will get bigger and stronger. However, it's stressing the body out abnormally because it's not authentic human movement. So I want you to tell me, and I'm guessing, Bria, that you will agree with me. Is there any movement in real life or even in sports that we would do that movement against resistance in repetition?
No. Like walking?
The knee is bending kind of passively as we swing our knee forward. What we're doing is that's inauthentic training. It's the same thing with sitting in the seats and pushing your feet up to straighten your knee against resistance.
Mhm.
Yes, it'll make the quads bigger. I mean, I used to do a lot of weight training that way, where I turn my toes out, I turn my toes in, I lean forward, I lean back. I wanted to get outer quads, inner quads. I was really stinking strong for somebody who's only 5'4", 115 pounds. I could leg press 400 pounds. So, but the issue is, what was I doing to myself?
Yeah.
Because again, what do we do in real life or even in sports that we have to straighten our knee against resistance in repetition? Now, even if you're kicking a football, it's not really against resistance. So, so the point is, we're creating this abnormal shear force on the knee joint, and I believe there's a lot of people out there who have knee issues because they've been training this way. And, it's the same thing with the shoulder, with the rotator cuff, everybody wanting to do the TheraBand to do external rotation. The rotator cuff's job is just to keep the joint stable. Its job is not for pushing, pulling, lifting, force. That's the other 14 muscles that directly involve the shoulder, and the pelvis and every other part of the body is there to help the shoulder to perform. And I tell people, when you go to lift something up overhead, if it's heavy and you're in real life, you're going to squat down so that you can load your power source, and you're going to push through your feet to lift it overhead. You're not going to say, oh, I can only use my lateral delt. I better not use any other muscle but my lateral delt. I better make sure I keep everything isolated and only work that one muscle. I used to see a lot of people in the clinic setting who went to the gym every day before or after work, and they had tendonitis, tendinosis, tendinopathy, because they were working their body like a dead person.
We've studied about the human body on dead bodies, which I understand needs to be done, but that's no different than, I think the big gender gap and being like, well, we're just going to tell women that they should do this because we've always studied men. It's like quite a different situation, isn't it?
Absolutely. I actually wrote well, I say pamphlet. It was about a 60-page booklet. Being female is not a medical diagnosis.
Okay, so let's dig more into this authentic human movement because everyone else listening has any curiosity like me. I think I'm now like, well, how do I maximize my body through this authentic human movement?
What do we do now that everybody's blown away and going, oh my gosh, now I can't do a workout? So it's important that, you can work out in the gym. You can, probably the most authentic would be to use free weights than the machines, because the majority of machines are created for 5'10" males.
Mm.
They've gotten better at the number of ways that you can modify the machine to fit your body more accurately. However, most people don't know how to do that, or they're uncomfortable because they don't want to draw a lot of attention and take a lot of time because you got people in line waiting for a machine. So you'll just use it. It's not really lined up to you very well. So that could be potentially harmful. Also, what I tell people is, with the machines, is the machines provide this external stabilizing component. I mean, in other words, if you're in a Smith press and you're doing that, you're not going to fall down, and you're not at risk of somebody. Nobody has to spot you to hold the weights, because the machine is spotting you. The machine is stabilizing everything.
Yeah.
So now, whoever's using these machines all the time, and they don't really use free weights or any of that, they go to do something heavy that really requires a lot of stress and force and strength, and they think they're stronger than they are, because their body's used to being stabilized externally. But we really want the body to be stabilizing internally. And so that's where doing, human body weight exercises and free weights is so much better, because your internal stabilizers are training as you do that. So now you are as strong as you think you are.
And so that obviously leads into this idea of the authentic human movement is strengthening your body in a way that the body will move, will need to move, should move.
If you think about the things that we do in real life, and you think about the things that you want to be able to do. So if we go into the aging component,
Mhm.
nobody ever wants to do that old commercial, help, I've fallen and I can't get up. And so, I actually had a home care patient who had that happen. He had had a stroke And he's lived independently for decades after that stroke, but he had one side of his body that really didn't work very well, but he used a cane, and he did have Lifeline. Someone who was working with him in his home installed a new phone for him, and they never called Lifeline to be sure it was connected. Unfortunately, he fell. Lifeline didn't work. And 3 days later, he was found. Now, he was still alive and he did recover. Thank God. I would never share this story if that weren't the case, because that would just be wrong. But he was dehydrated and he was hospitalized for a little while. He did recover. And so it was interesting because, when I became his home care therapist, always before I left, I would say, "Do you want me to make sure Lifeline's working?" And he would go, "Yes." We want to have the ability to get off the floor, no matter how old we are. And most people want to be able to get on and off the floor with their grandkids, um, you know, or to be able to garden or, just basically live life. So that's important. If you're not strong enough to do a push-up, you could do what I call a scat press, where you keep your elbows straight and you just let your scapula go back, your shoulder blades or your angel wings, because that will help to build the upper trunk strength. Eventually, you'll be able to do a push-up. There's a lot of ways to gain strength, but that's authentic, at least. I mean, how many people have gotten down on their hands and knees to see what's under the bed, I mean, that's a real movement that we're gonna do, right? And then there's, squats and lunges, and those kind of things are very authentic. Even a pull-up's authentic because you could technically need to see what's going on somewhere. So there's a lot of things that are authentic. What's not is isolating a muscle and forcing the rest of the body to sit still and not assist that muscle. Because now the muscle's kind of crying out for help, going, "Why aren't you letting anybody help me? This isn't how I'm designed to work." So, because in real life, we don't isolate anything. And we also don't make sure that everything is perfectly aligned. I mean, when you squat down to get something heavy out of from under the kitchen sink, you're not making sure that your feet are hip width apart and your toes are perfectly forward, and you're engaging your core, and you're doing all these little things, pick up whatever it is you're trying to get out from under the sink. So, training your body that way. I mean, you can do squats with your feet in 27 different foot positions. You can do push-ups with your hands in 27 different foot positions. You're incorporating all three planes of motion. So, because that's real life.
Chronic pain comes from inactivity and then inauthentic movement. Do I have that right? So you call it?
Yes.
So then when we think about maybe like the physique of bodybuilders, or the physique that I think a lot of people covet when they look towards like getting super fit, is that considered inauthentic?
Well, that in itself is not authentic. It's how did you get there?
Right. I see.
Typically, bodybuilders tend to use a lot of substances and things
Yeah.
because the human body doesn't normally respond that intensely
Yeah.
to exercise. So, and this is not me, trying to slander, an entire profession. You can get really strong doing basic movements. I mean, really strong. So then it's going to depend on, what's your diet? Are you well hydrated? What other things are you doing?
So then I feel like there's two paths here. I'm thinking about the women listening, and I'm thinking about myself. Of course, I'm super curious about this. We have someone who is in chronic pain, in midlife, or is having pain, in different parts of their body, that needs to obviously come back from that. And then there's people who aren't, but want to, feel their best, optimize their muscle and their hormones, and age well. If we, in option one, if we're looking at chronic pain, where do they start? Like, what is the beginning, or is there a first step that you can suggest for that?
Yes. Yes. The most important thing is to figure out where their culprits are. That's why my first book, Pain Culprits, is called Pain Culprits. Because unfortunately, in healthcare world, when people walk into a medical office, they're seen as a body part because they're there for knee pain or shoulder pain or hip pain or back pain. And so they're going to be treated as a body part. They're going to be seen as a body part. They're going to be focused on as a body part. And that's not how the human body is designed to function. Therefore, you have to look at the whole person. Now, some people might say, well, how on earth can, you assess a whole person? It's going to take hours. Well, it's not true, because the Gray Institute has this beautiful little thing called 3D maps, and it's one of the coursework I've taken from them. And I can spend about 15, 20 minutes max with somebody, walking them through 6 movements on the right side of the body and the left side of the body, so 12 altogether, but they're the same 6 movements, and that will expose how their body responds in 66 different joint motions.
What is an
So it lets me know what's going on at the ankles, what's going on at the hips, what's going on at the thoracic spine, what's going on at the shoulder. So I can see what's happening. And because I know how everything is designed to function, I know those 3 main culprit areas. And I'll try to do like a little bullet list so people don't get overwhelmed. So I want everybody to hear this, okay? If you have knee pain, it's almost never your knees. Even if it shows up as osteoarthritis on imaging, as long as it's not severe, bone on bone, it's unlikely that the arthritis is the cause of the pain. The cause is almost always the ankles below. I mean, I'd say like, oh my gosh, and this is just off the top of my head, but probably 80% or more of people have a history of an ankle sprain or some point where they weren't walking well on both feet for whatever reasons, whether it was surgery, injury, whatever. And so that ankle or ankles are not functioning correctly, and the knees are counting on those ankles.
Right.
And then the hips above the knees, because your hip is the second most mobile joint in your body, but it's weight bearing. And so if it's lost function, the knee is going to be the victim. If the ankles aren't working right, the knee is going to be the victim. So this is why so often chronic knee pain is not resolved, because the person is seen as a knee. Nobody's looking at their ankles or their hips. Now, when we move up to the low back is similar. I often kind of tease people and say you can fix the low back by ignoring it, because it's almost never the low back. Even if things show up on imaging, it's almost always the hips below or the trunk above. And the simple thing for people to remember is the lumbar spine, or the low back, which is between the trunk and the pelvis, is not really designed biomechanically, in other words, how the joints move, to rotate. But that doesn't mean we should not rotate, because we are. If you've ever heard of Feldenkrais, we're rotatory beings. I mean, we rotate to do everything. To get out of your car, you have to rotate. So here's the thing. The low back's job is to send that rotation up or down. So if I'm standing and I turn to look behind me, my trunk just rotated. And so my low back's job is to send that rotation down into my hips. Now, what happens if my hips don't rotate well? My low back goes every time I rotate. My low back's not happy. I think I got a low back problem, but it actually got a hip problem. And then it's the same if you're standing in your kitchen and you're standing at the stove, and you move and take a foot, move a foot over, rotating to get into the refrigerator or the kitchen sink. Now you've just rotated from the hips up. And now the low back's job is to send that rotation up into the trunk. What if the trunk doesn't rotate? The low back again gets jammed every time you rotate. So I tell people, if you're sitting in your car and you have to look behind you to back up your car in your driveway, if you have neck pain or low back pain, it's probably your trunk. And the trunk is kind of the silent saboteur, because it rarely has symptoms. But if it's not doing its job, it can wreak havoc. Your shoulders, your neck, your low back.
So what makes up the trunk? Like, is it then the muscles in the trunk that aren't working properly? Like one's not engaged, they're underperforming?
Well, it's a good question. It's the spine itself.
Okay.
It kind of loses some mobility. And what you do is you learn how to train that back by working the muscles, because muscles are what move bone.
Okay, that's fascinating.
I do some in some of my, I've done it on my YouTube channel, but I do like type 1, type 2 movement with the spine. But typically, if people know that they make sure their ankles are moving in all 3 planes, mobile and stable, their knees are going to be happier. If their hips,
3 planes quickly so that everyone.
oh yes, I'm sorry.
No.
3 planes of motion is we move forward and back, we move sideways, like side bending, and we turn. And so the ankles need to be able to do that. All 3 planes, full motion and stable. Like if you picked up a foot and tapped your toe somewhere, can you keep from falling down? That's stability. It's not picking up a foot and counting to 10, because that's balance. That's not stability. Stability is when you disrupt your position and you're able to regain your position without falling. That's what we want. We want stability.
These are where we discover the pain culprit.
Correct. Yes, you test your body in the 3 planes of motion, which I actually have a free video for this on, one of my websites. It's my Move Without Pain private club,
Okay.
and it's actually MWPprivateclub.com. MWP stands for Move Without Pain, and when you go to that, there's a free membership people can sign up for, and there's a 23-minute video that will show them how to assess their body in 3 planes of motion. And then there's an introductory movement class with 6 exercises that will train them how to move in 3 planes of motion.
We talked about knee pain, we talked about low back pain, and I think you said there was a third?
The culprit areas are the ankles, the hips, and the trunk.
Okay.
Those are the 3 culprit areas. So if somebody has shoulder pain, it could be their ankles, it could be their hips, it could be their trunk, because the shoulder's dependent on all of those. And the same thing with the neck. The neck's dependent on everything, from the ground up. So, and I'll give a couple of examples. So I had a guy who came onto my schedule. His therapist had gone on vacation and he had neck pain. And I saw that he'd had about 8 or 9 sessions and wasn't any better, according to the notes anyway. And so I asked him, was he any better? He said no. I said, well, do you mind if we look at other things? Because I saw the treatment was kind of your conventional stuff, hot pack, ultrasound, massage, which isn't really what I do. So I said, do you mind if we look and see if we can figure out why you're not better? And he was all game for that. And so I'm looking at some stuff. I'm looking at the low back, and I don't think that's it. And so I asked him, when do you get your neck pain? And he said, in the morning when he takes a walk. He loves his walk in the morning. He doesn't want to give it up. But by the end of the walk, he's got neck pain and a headache. So knowing the connection, I said, well, how are your ankles? Have you ever sprained them? And he said, constantly in college during sports. I looked at his ankles and they really lacked a certain range of motion that's required for them to perform correctly when you're walking. And so I did some joint mobilization. I showed him a really kind of a really effective way to get the calf muscles longer because they hadn't had to in decades. And he never had to come back. His neck pain was gone, no more headaches. So, but imagine if they'd have kept treating his neck, because see, the neck was the victim. The culprit was the ankles.
Asking for myself, and I'm sure all the women listening here. So if we go and watch your video and join the free membership, we will be able to start to understand where the culprits are, or do we read the book? Where do we learn to go and really?
Yeah, yeah. If so, I actually have a PDF that people can print out and they can document their findings.
Okay.
Like which plane of motion do they struggle with most? What area do they notice is most limited? Where are they getting the pain? And you can kind of determine what your culprits are. Then go ahead and do the training of that first free class, that introductory class, because I show in that class how to mobilize the ankles, how to mobilize the front hip, which tends to lock short. We do a lot of sitting.
Yeah.
And then, how to get that nice 3-plane motion. And I've had people get out of pain just from doing that free class. So, but there's a lot of other content on that membership should somebody say, you know what, this helped me and I think this is what I want. And so then they can join and they can access, there's like 52 other classes, there's tracks for specific body part areas. So if you pick the knee pain track, you're not going to get a bunch of exercises for your knees. You're going to get a bunch of exercises for the parts of the body that have to work right for your knees to be happy. So it's like restoring whole body function.
Does it make sense to kind of try to find your pain culprit even if you don't have pain? Like, does it make sense to go through this exercise to see if you are beginning to have imbalances or inefficiencies in different areas?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question. Oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever had anybody ask me that. So yes, because so many people have a hidden deficit that they don't know is there,
Yeah.
because the human brain is designed to cheat. So in other words, if I had to walk across the floor and pick something up, my brain is going to direct my body on how to do that as soon as I have the thought. And all my muscles are going to respond when I initiate the movement. If there are muscles that are not performing correctly or accurately, my brain is going to use other muscles to get me from point A to point B. But my brain isn't going to tell me that. So I don't even know that I have deficits, especially if there's no pain. And over time, of course, those deficits will create chronic pain patterns. But let's catch it before it happens. So, I've had people assess and they'll find they've only got 1 or 2 small deficits. Well, why not address them now before they snowball? I mean, prevention is one of my favorite words.
This is the first step for anyone
Yeah.
can do this thing. Um, for is there another step? Like, would there be a different step at all for anyone at any point in time?
Well, it depends on their goals because everybody's different. And, some people just want to move well and they're happy with that. I also have my online academy, which is for those people who don't want to decline as they get older. And there are other things, I call them my 7 pillars of lifelong well being, because you kind of have to make sure your mindset is good and you know that the human body is not designed to decline on a cellular level. That's science. And then you need to be sure that you are moving correctly, which of course the academy teaches. And then are you feeding your body properly so that everything is happening? Are you hydrating your body properly? Muscle is 78% water. If you're struggling to gain muscle, you might just be dehydrated. And then, of course, there's having the expert guidance, because if you were going to, go down the Amazon, you wouldn't try that on your own. You'd want a guide.
Yep.
So there's so much stuff out there that just confuses people. And I always say if you seek somebody's help, there's 2 very important questions to ask. How long have they been doing what they're doing? And how many people have they helped?
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many letters are after their name, how many books they've written.
Yeah.
You just want to know, how long have you been doing this and how successful are you at it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what matters most. So you want that expert guidance and you want a community, because I'm sure most of the people who are listening right now have heard their neighbors and their family members talk about, oh, I'm getting older. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. It's all downhill from here. I mean, the stories I've heard, the things I've heard from people. Oh, yeah, my mom used to say, if you wake up in the morning and you're not in pain, you're probably dead. Um, I had a guy who was 35 that I talked to, and he said when he turned 30, his friends told him, it's all downhill from here. Just wait. So you don't want to be in that environment, or obviously you can't necessarily extricate yourself from family members and loved ones, but you want to have a community of people who know the truth so that you feel supported, and you get to hear the right things to keep you training properly and motivated, and kind of stand against all that nonsense that's out there.
Mhm.
And then of course consistency. That's key. If you're not consistent, you can do 3 plane training, authentic training, but if you don't do it again for 3 weeks, it's not going to really be helpful. So that's what my academy does. It helps everybody to apply all 7 of those pillars.
Oh, I love those 7 pillars. I'd love to just ask a little bit about, like, nutrition and hydration since we talk a lot about that is there I mean, and as we know, everybody's different, everybody's goals are different, but do you find that there's sort of like a base level of guidelines for hydration and nutrition that you like to use, or is it very individual?
Yes, well, I do have a diploma in nutrition education that I earned from, Wellness Forum Health for, Institute for Health Wellness Forum Institute for Health Studies,
Mm.
and, it's, it's not funded by industry, so there's no bias, it's all data-based on what we've learned. So, what I've learned is what really works toward human health.
Mm.
The physicians and medical experts and healthcare experts that I studied under to earn that diploma have been helping people restore health, get off meds for 30, 40 years. So their track record speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's a huge issue about what's really determined to be a healthy diet and what isn't. And so I try not to go into too many details on something like this, because I really want people to get the whole truth and not just pieces. And then they'll be like, oh, that's not true because so and so said the opposite. I mean, even in my world, some of the experts disagree on some of the specifics. And some people get so specific
Yeah,
that they just create anxiety in people.
absolutely.
It's just, "Oh, please. I have to cut my broccoli and wait 15 minutes before I eat it because it's gotta have this cellular change to give me more nutrition." I mean, I'm eating broccoli, for crying out loud. Isn't that enough, right?
Yeah.
So we have to, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but let's relax. Let's take a breath. Let's not stress about doing everything perfect. Just know what matters most
Yeah.
and apply it consistently.
Yeah, and listen to your body, I guess, right? Like, if you feel full and satisfied and have good energy, I mean, that can be enough.
Yeah, if you're not taking any medications, you don't have any disease processes going on in your body, and you are eating well.
Can you tell us, I know I could talk to you for 14 hours. This has been so fascinating. Thank you. But can you tell us, so you talked about pain culprits. Can you tell us about the book Aging Culprits? Like when we'd want to read that book, what we would learn out of it?
Yes. So, well, the pain culprits has chapters on body parts and explains the other parts that really impact it. I also have a whole chapter on pain medications and the risks and benefits of common treatments for pain. I mean, I got a lot in there that's not just on the body parts. And then aging culprits is really for. I mean, I've got a chapter in there on incontinence. You can kind of eliminate the need for disposable underwear, being fully clothed and upright, doing exercise. So, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. Now, some of that, it depends on the person. Do they have nerve damage or, those kind of things? But for the most part, there's a lot of really successful training that can impact that issue. And I go into detail on that. And then I talk about bone health. A lot of what we've been taught about our bones just disintegrating as we get older is inaccurate as well. I go over the risks and benefits of conventional treatments. I'm certainly not telling anybody what to do.
Yeah.
My job is to inform people.
Yeah.
This is what the data shows. These are your risks. These are your benefits. And then you decide what's the right thing to do, having an informed conversation with your prescribing practitioner. So I cover a lot of other topics that people are really concerned about, like balance and stability,
Yeah.
strength, joint pain, those kind of things.
Incontinence, is that like centered around like a lot of pelvic floor like exercises that'll support the pelvic floor, or are there other issues that impact that?
Well, it's interesting you say that, but your pelvic floor kind of counts on your ankles working properly and your hips working properly and your trunk working properly. So those three culprit areas can actually impact the function of the pelvic floor. And I go into some detail on that in the book. There's a lot of information that should be mainstream knowledge, but it's not. So that's why I thank you for allowing me to be here and get it out there.
I have a very strong feeling that people are going to want to read your books and really especially watch this video and get into the memberships, because this is your way of being able to help people that can't book in to see you in person, right?
Yeah, I can only see so many people with private consulting. So I do private consulting. I mean, I use Zoom. I've done it long before the world shut down.
Yeah.
Before then, I had to teach people how to use Zoom. Now they know,
Yeah.
so it makes things a little bit easier. But there's only one of me, so that's why I've created these programs so that people, and not everybody wants to work privately with someone. They prefer to be independent.
Do you have any thoughts on frozen shoulder or some of the things we hear about, like things, more common things that seem to be, we're told, are specific to menopause?
One of the things they try to say increases your risk of adhesive capsulitis if it really is frozen shoulder, which a lot of the times it's kind of misdiagnosed. It's not really a frozen shoulder. But if it is, they're saying that having diabetes is increases your risk. Now that's funny because I had a lot of people show up in the clinic with that issue and they didn't have diabetes. So, the medical world likes to try to, oh, a lot of people have this. Well, that doesn't mean anything. There's something I call error of attribution, which means that neighborhood has a whole lot of heart disease and there's a whole lot of telephone poles. I bet those telephone poles are causing that heart disease. So there's this error of attribution. When you do human studies, there's so many variables because unless they're looking at how they eat, how they live, what kind of stress levels were they under? Did they have a healthy childhood? How many diagnoses do they have? How many medications have they take? I mean, I remember, I was 44 when I gave birth to my youngest child, and I was 40 when I gave birth to her older sister, and then I was 19 when I gave birth to my first child, and just before I turned 21, my second child. So there was like a 20-year gap.
Mhm.
So it was funny because when I was 40, they wanted me to do the tests because, there's this risk of bad things happening. Well, there's also a risk of bad things happening from the tests. And so I did my due diligence of my research. And what I found was the only reason there's a higher risk when somebody's older is if they've taken medications. So I'd never been on any meds. And the higher risk was actually the teenage population. So technically, I really wasn't in a high risk group. And of course, I refused the testing because I wasn't going to risk losing my child.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I won't go into a sad detail. I was told by a physician who, yeah, but it's crazy how, we look at these risk factors and there's so much more behind them. That's why I'm really big on informing people.
And you're so good at it. I'm very grateful for your time today. I have one more question before I'd love for you to tell us kind of again how we get into your world and how we get your books. But what are some of your favorite habits that you do physically every day? Like I think, I love the mindset, the nutrition, the hydration, the guidance. Like I love your steps there, but in terms of your own physical movement, what works for you?
Probably one of my very favorite things to do is to take a walk. I live kind of in the country.
Yeah.
And so there's a road I can take that's a dirt road, and it goes past a little farm where there's some, like, miniature donkeys and a peacock, and there's another road I can take where there's a beautiful stream. I can stand on a bridge and just look at this gorgeous stream, and right now, I was there this morning, and the water's really rushing because of the snow melting and things. But walking in nature is and it's so funny because I'm kind of a type A, and I sort of need permission to take time away from my work. And when I looked at the data that showed that it would reduce cortisol levels, in other words, walking in nature reduces your stress levels. And cortisol can make us fat in the trunk, and it can eat away at our short-term memory because it impacts the hippocampus.
Mhm.
And so I don't want that happening. And so I'm like, okay, so I'm doing this so that I can keep doing what I'm doing for a really, really, really long time. And so that's probably my favorite physical activity. And I call it relaxed walking. I'm not out there, as fast as I can go and all of that. Now, if I do want to make it more exercise, I'll run. I'll put different shoes on and now I'm running.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the walk is what I really want to do.
I love that. I think that's beautiful permission for all of us to get out in nature. Thank you.
Yeah. And lots of data behind that too, how good that is for us.
Love that. I love the data. I think it's very motivating. Eileen, thank you so much. This has been so enlightening. I am just, yeah, very fascinated by this conversation and the work that you do. How do we learn more from you? I'm going to put the link in for your private membership, for your free private membership, which is great. But anywhere else we can get your books, that we can get into your world, where do you like to connect?
Yeah, well, my books have their own website. So Aging Culprits has its own website. Pain Culprits has its own website. And I have lots of resources that are free on those websites because my publisher told me if the book was too many pages, people wouldn't buy it. And I didn't want to shortchange anybody. So all the stuff that I wanted to put in the book is on the websites. The book itself, they have to read it, but the extra resources are on the websites, and they can find out how to get it there as well.
Mhm.
And then probably if somebody's not sure about whether they should do the pain thing or the aging thing, I have a main website called Have Lifelong Wellbeing. And that website has a little 5-question quiz that takes like 2 minutes to answer. And that will aim people toward whatever content and coursework and teachings I have on those specific concerns, whether they're free or paid courses, but it will aim them so that they're not completely lost going, oh my gosh, where do I go?
Thank you so much. That's amazing. Okay, I will put all these links in the show notes for everyone listening. Again, Eileen, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes.
I think now you have some very data backed information to go out and be more in your life and not just less on a scale. We'll catch you in the next episode.
If you're 35 plus and ready to stop guessing, start understanding your hormones, and feel your absolute best, hit subscribe. That's what we do here.